My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 42 years old, and the day my brother tried to have me arrested for drug possession was the same day I dismantled the largest fentanyl operation on the West Coast. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in the back of the patrol car, wrists zip-tied, watching Danny pace across his perfect lawn, waving his arms like a conductor before cops. "She's been erratic for months," he barked smugly, his voice sharp, practiced, dripping with superiority. "Living in that ratty apartment, unemployed. Probably. Dealing drugs to survive like some desperate failure." The officers scribbled notes while I stayed silent. Silence had been my armor for 20 years. 20 years of undercover work. 20 years of letting my own family think I was nothing. "Check her jacket," Danny demanded angrily at once. I found a bag of white powder in there. He meant the bag of baking soda I carried to scrub coffee stains from my surveillance van. The surveillance van parked just 3 blocks away, equipped with enough federal tech to run a war. Officer Martinez looked uncertain, glancing between us. His partner, Rodriguez, studied me with sympathy. But Danny doubled down, stabbing a finger at me. "Does she look like someone clean to you? 42? Never held a real job. Never contributed anything. Except shame, disgrace, and endless embarrassment." His words landed like they always had. Cutting, cruel. And yet, I didn't flinch this time at all. Because deep down, I knew the game was about to flip and expose the truth completely. What Danny didn't know was that I wasn't the one on trial that day. He was. Growing up, the script was written long before me. Danny was the achiever, the golden child, the heir. I was the afterthought, the scrappy girl who, in their eyes, never measured up to anything. At dinner, Dad would beam at Danny's latest grades, while my B in math drew silence, or worse, sarcasm. "Sarah tries, but she's not like her brother," Mom would say, smiling, as if it excused the wound. When Danny got into Harvard, the house exploded. Champagne bottles, balloons, bragging calls to relatives. When I quietly finished community college, Dad muttered, "Well, at least she's employable," and left the table. Even birthdays carried the sting of comparison. One year, my cake had his name spelled on it, because Mom just assumed the bakery knew who the celebration was really about. Not me. And the comments followed me into adulthood, at reunions, weddings, even funerals. "You still working those odd jobs? Still unstable? Maybe you'll settle down one day like Danny." They didn't know that my unstable years were spent crawling through cartel tunnels in Mexico. That my odd jobs were undercover assignments, where a single wrong move meant execution. But I endured their dismissal in silence. Better they think me useless than bury me early. Better disappointment than a funeral with my picture, framed in black and placed on a church altar. The lies were heavy, but not as heavy as the constant ache of being unseen, unheard, unvalued. And Danny sharpened that ache into a weapon, reminding me at every turn that I was nothing. But what they mistook for failure was the very cover that kept them alive. For 20 years, I carried the mask perfectly. The shabby apartment, the thrift store clothes, the silence, all of it carefully designed to make me invisible, not just to criminals, but to my own family. While Danny flaunted mansions and magazine features, I lived in shadows, cheap diners, bus terminals, motels. Each assignment demanded I erase myself a little more, until Sarah the sister barely existed, only Agent Chen. I learned to vanish in plain sight, to play the burnout who couldn't hold down work. Neighbors whispered, relatives clucked their tongues, and Danny never wasted a chance to sneer publicly. Still, I stayed silent. Silence let them underestimate me, and underestimation was my deadliest weapon. Cartels never saw me coming until it was too late, and my own brother thought I was already defeated. But even silence has cracks. On nights alone, staring at peeling apartment walls, I'd wonder what it felt like to be celebrated, to hear "we're proud of you" without disguise or pretense. Those thoughts had to be buried, just like my name. When I slipped into new identities, new cover stories, mechanic, waitress, addict, widow. Whatever the mission required, I became. Then 6 months ago, routine analysis flagged something odd. Prescriptions linked to a Dr. Michael Harrison, Danny's in-law. At first, it looked like sloppy bookkeeping, minor fraud. But patterns emerged. Opioids, benzos, stimulants, massive volume. I dug deeper, tracing supply chains across state lines. And there it was, Danny's software company at the center. Not managing patients, but funneling pills through clinics, feeding addiction that claimed hundreds of American lives. Each report I wrote felt like a knife twisting, because the name on the network wasn't a stranger's. It was my brother's, the one I once protected, the boy who built blanket forts and cried at night. But I couldn't look away. Duty didn't allow it. Every overdose death had a story, a grieving mother. And every digital trail led back to Danny's empire, built on human wreckage disguised as corporate success. Still, I had to bide my time. We needed airtight evidence, financials, coded messages, witnesses. So I let Danny think he was winning, even as I cataloged every crime behind his polished smile. And the cruelest irony? The proof of his empire sat inside the same jacket he claimed held drugs. The moment came faster than I expected. The patrol car rocked gently as Rodriguez leaned in, asking for my full name, her tone careful, steady. "Sarah Michelle Chen," I answered, meeting her eyes. She frowned, glancing at her tablet, whispering to Martinez. Danny paced like a general awaiting surrender, waving impatiently. "Don't listen to her, she's delusional. Arrest her already." He jabbed his finger at me like he owned the badge. Rodriguez hesitated, then reached into my jacket pocket. Her hand brushed against the leather credentials case, the one I'd carried for 2 decades, unseen, unspoken. When she opened it, her entire expression transformed. Martinez leaned in, eyes widening at the gold seal. DEA. Special Agent. 20 years of classified sacrifice, now burning in plain sight beneath the afternoon sun. Rodriguez snapped the case shut and stiffened her posture. "Sir, you need to step back immediately," she ordered. Danny laughed, high-pitched, brittle. "That's fake, please." She probably bought it online with food stamp money. But his voice was cracking, his performance fraying fast. Within minutes, black SUVs pulled up the driveway. The sight was unmistakable. Federal marshals, my task force, and Special Agent in Charge Reyes herself, stepping out, her eyes locking on me, then narrowing at Danny. "Agent Chen, are you injured?" Reyes asked firmly. "No, ma'am," I answered, "just restrained." Rodriguez cut the zip ties, her hands slightly trembling. Freedom returned in one sharp snap of plastic. Reyes turned toward my brother, her voice like steel. "Mr. Daniel Chen, you are under arrest for conspiracy, distribution of controlled substances, and money laundering." She listed the charges like hammer strikes in open air. The marshals advanced, and Danny's face collapsed. Confusion, disbelief, then fear swirled into one pale mask. "Sarah, wait, what's happening?" His voice was small now, no trace of the arrogance that once filled every room. I looked down at him, my wrists still red from ties, and let the words I'd buried for years finally surface. "I'm DEA, Danny, 20 years undercover, and you've been the target all along." His legs gave out. He sat hard on the driveway, in front of his perfect house, perfect neighbors, perfect lie. The golden child, the pride of the family, exposed as nothing more than a criminal kingpin. But watching my brother unravel wasn't triumph. It was the beginning of the hardest confrontation yet. The street had turned into a stage of reckoning. Neighbors gathered at windows, phones raised discreetly, recording. For years they'd seen Danny as the golden boy, and me as the shameful sister who couldn't measure up. Now the cameras caught him on his knees, federal agents circling, shackles glinting in the sunlight. I stepped closer, not as his sister anymore, but as the agent who had ended his empire. "Sarah, please," he whispered, eyes darting for escape. "You don't understand. I built this for us. For the family, for security, I can explain." His words sounded weak, rehearsed, and utterly hollow. I crouched so we were face to face again. "You destroyed families, Danny. 200 dead. Mothers burying children because you wanted profits." My voice was low, steady, cutting through his denial. "I protected this family for decades, sacrificed everything. And you chose greed. You chose blood on your hands." For the first time, he had no script, no defense, only the stunned silence of a man cornered. Reyes gave me a nod, granting space for closure. So I kept going, every word sharpened by truth. "All those times you called me worthless? That was cover. The nights I missed, the lies, all to keep you safe." Danny shook his head violently, tears streaking his face. "No. Mom and Dad said you were broken, unstable. I believed them. I thought you were nothing." His voice cracked on that word. Nothing. I stood, watching marshals haul him upright. "That's the tragedy," I said. "You thought wrong." And the words hung heavy, undeniable for everyone listening. The golden boy had been exposed by the family failure. Claire, his wife, screamed from the doorway, clutching the kids. The perfect suburban picture ripped apart in a single hour. Her sobs carried across the street, mixing with sirens, as Danny's empire crumbled in front of the entire neighborhood. The marshals shoved him into the transport van. Reporters were already arriving, shouting questions, cameras flashing. I felt every eye on me, not pitying anymore, but searching, realizing the story they thought they knew was wrong. Still, the confrontation wasn't over, because as the convoy rolled away, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made my chest tighten. Mom. The reckoning inside the family was only beginning. Her message would cut deeper than any courtroom scene, and it was one I wasn't sure I could face. I sat in my surveillance van, hands still trembling. The glow of sunset painting gold across the windshield. The neighborhood had quieted, but whispers lingered, curtains shifting as people processed what they'd seen. My phone buzzed again with the message from Mom. Just heard about Danny on the news, please. Tell me you weren't involved. Please say it's not you. I stared at the words, heavy, almost pleading. I typed back slowly, choosing truth over silence. I was involved. I caught him. I'm DEA. For a long moment, only 3 dots blinked, disappeared, returned again, as if she couldn't find the words. Finally, a reply came. 20 years. 20 years? Another pause, then, your father would have been proud. I set the phone down, the ache spreading wide. Relief, sorrow, vindication, all at once overwhelming. Outside, the world kept moving. Children on bikes. A couple walking their dog, oblivious to the war that had just been waged and won on their street. But inside, something shifted. I could finally breathe. For the first time in decades, I wasn't undercover. I wasn't the disappointment, the unstable sister, the failure everyone whispered about behind closed doors. I was Sarah Chen, federal agent, survivor, protector. I thought about my father's words, unspoken but present, about every family I'd shielded from poison and grief, about every sacrifice buried under years of false shame. And for once, it felt like enough. More than enough. Because the family failure had become the family shield, and the weight I'd carried for 20 years finally lifted. Tomorrow would bring media, paperwork, endless questions. But tonight, I allowed myself the smallest victory, peace. Have you ever been treated like the family failure, only for the truth to finally come out? Wherever you're watching from, morning coffee or late night quiet, I'd like to hear your story in the comments. And if this one stayed with you, subscribe to join a community, because no one should carry that burden alone.